A very good afternoon and a warm welcome to all the students present today to attend the online lecture. I, Professor Shivangi Sethi, hold immense pleasure to begin with the new session of third year BCom semester 5 with our very own subject Business Administration. I would have been glad to conduct a classroom lecture with one-on-one interaction, but as you all know, that due to this current pandemic situation, conducting an online lecture is the need of the hour. So I hope and believe that you all would be even more attentive and regular for your online classes. Now, before I could begin with your online lectures for business administration, I wanted to design a lecture specifically where I could explain you the syllabus structure for semester 5 in BA. So this particular lecture would give you an idea broadly about what are the things that are covered in semester 5 for BA. I have prepared a lecture particularly to describe you the syllabus structure where which are the units to be covered, and in that unit which are the key points and which are the things that you need to pay attention and you need to learn. So moving further with today's lecture, the first unit that you need to cover is all about financial management, covering a weightage of 50%. You all might have remembered that in second year BCom, I had asked you a question on the very first day that when you talk about MBA and you talk about the different specializations in MBA, there are three specializations that come to your mind broadly. That MBA can be done in marketing, MBA can be done in finance, and MBA can also be done in human resource. Even at that point of time, I had told you that we are going to study about human resource and we are going to study about marketing in second year BCom. But the entire specialization of finance has to be covered in your third year BCom semester 5. So I can say half of your syllabus for semester 5, that you can also see 50% of the syllabus is nothing but talking about this specialization, that is finance. So says the unit financial management. Now in this particular unit, you can see there are 5 different chapters you need to work upon, you need to study. The first of it is financial management. Now go back to your first year BCom. The very first definition you had studied was what is management. The lines that might be coming in your mind is management is an art and science of getting the things done through the efforts of others. Fine. But now that management has to be applied on a term that is finance, combined together, it becomes financial management. So now you would ask me why finance has to be managed, why money needs to be managed. So let me be very clear that finance is the ultimate lifeblood of every organization. Just as food is required for our body, finance is required for every organization to function. Imagine a situation where you are running a company without having money in your pockets. It's completely impossible. So the finance has to be managed. When I say managed, you need to decide from where would you raise the funds and where would you invest the funds. Meaning to say, आप कहाँ से वो पैसा लाओगे, कौन से sources होंगे जहाँ से पैसा आएगा, and ultimately वो पैसा कहाँ पे invest होने वाला है या कहाँ पे spend होने वाला है. Because ultimately, whatever money you raise, you either are going to spend that money or either you are going to save that money. Similarly, these things also imply on financial management in an organization. So you need to study about the meaning of financial management. Also, there is going to be a concept that you have to do, that is a traditional concept of financial management. When I say traditional and when I say modern, earlier people used to only consider and focus more on raising of finance, कि पैसा कहाँ से हम रेज करने वाले हैं या वो कौन से सोर्सेज होंगे जहाँ से पैसा आएगा. But in today's world, You cannot just focus on raising of finance. You need to be equally cautious and conscious as to where would that money be utilized and how would it be utilized, because after all what we require is optimum utilization of finance, how to raise the money at a minimum cost, but how to use that money that gives you maximum returns. And that is how every business makes profit. So you need to study the meaning and you need to study the approach of this financial management. Lastly, in this chapter, you would also have to study about the functions of financial management. So there are some kind of executive functions, there are some incidental functions. Now, I'm not going to talk about those functions in depth, because definitely in the next lectures to come, we are going to study what are these functions and what are the things you have to study in that. So I'm not going to talk about that today. Moving further, in the same unit, you have another chapter, that is chapter number 2. It talks about financial planning. Now, again, go to your first year. You had studied about some managerial functions. Now, if you remember, there was an abbreviation we used to do post call, where the first P always used to stand for, and your answer comes planning. That time also I used to ask, why planning? Why do we need to plan? So I used to ask whether planning is done for past, present or future. The answer you used to give me was planning future के लिए ही किया जाता है. Now why you need to plan for future? So again, a sentence you used to tell me that future is uncertain. We do not know what will happen in future. So you always predict, you always plan for that in present, in advance. Similarly, the same planning is also to be implied on finance. You cannot have a situation where you have overcapitalization, that is, you have more amount of finance. Also, you cannot have a situation where you are undercapitalized, that is, you are having less amount of finance. Both the situations are not good and both have their adverse consequences. Zyada paisa hona bhi is not good, because that money ultimately is not getting used up. Maybe it is just blocked in your organization. And having less amount of finance is also not good, क्योंकि तब तो आपके objectives ही achieve नहीं हो पाएंगे. You cannot work efficiently. So what is required? You need to have an adequate amount of finance. There has to be an optimum and balanced finance in your organization. So when I plan finance, we actually need to plan the requirement of finance. How much finance is actually required? Once that is planned, thereafter you can decide the sources from where the finance will be raised. Ultimately, we will decide where the finance will be invested or where it will be used. So you are going to do the meaning of financial planning. Now, be clear about one thing in this syllabus, in this semester, that every topic you would do in this unit, particularly of financial management, one question will always be coming, that is the factors affecting. Whether you take second chapter, third, fourth or fifth, this question will come in every chapter as to what are the factors that would be affecting. So even in this, you need to study about the factors that will affect your financial plan. There are a number of factors, some that could be within the control of organization, तो आप उसको micro factors के नाम से भी जानते हो. There could be some factors which are outside the control of the organization, such as the macro factors. So these factors will affect your financial plan. Because when I say finance can either be raised from your own funds or it can be from your borrowed funds. To name a few, आप finance या तो equity से raise करते हो, that is your own fund, or either you raise it from any kind of debenture, bond, preference shares, or it can also be from the banks in the form of loan. So there are a number of factors which will affect whether to raise money from borrowed funds or whether to have own funds. So we have to do those factors also. There are types of financial planning. It can either be a short-term financial plan that is lesser than a year. It can also be a long-term financial plan that is more than a year. There are some guiding principles. There are some sound guiding principles you have to follow when you undertake financial planning. It cannot be in a haphazard manner that you plan your finance. तो कुछ prerequisites या कुछ guiding principles आपको follow करने पड़ते हैं as an organization before you undertake financial planning. Thirdly, the third chapter in this unit talks about capitalization. Maybe you have not heard about capitalization, लेकिन capital के बारे में आपने सुना होगा. And the accountancy students can very well tell me what is capital. So जितना भी पैसा organization में invested है, उसे आप capital के नाम से जानते हो. Whatever money that is put in the business is nothing but capital. So that capital needs to be studied in this chapter, but there are a number of concepts of capital. For an accountant, the capital is different. For a businessman, it is different. From the legal point of view, again, the definition of capital is different. So those concepts we are going to do in this chapter. There would be some kind of theories, there could be some kind of principles of capitalization that you would be studying. Again, I'm not talking about those principles in depth today. We shall take it while we would take this chapter. Very importantly, and what I can say the heart of the chapter are these questions, namely undercapitalization and overcapitalization. Just to give you a brief idea, I can say that when a business organization has funds more than its requirement, its earnings are not well enough, लेकिन capital बहुत ज़्यादा invest हो चुका है, that kind of a situation would be overcapitalization. Let us say I require only 1,000 rupees, but when I take a loan of 10,000, it is somewhat like overcapitalization. You have money more than requirement. अब आप बोलोगे कि ये situation problematic क्यों है? It is problematic because excess funds blocked up in the business are also dangerous. They are also not good because it is increasing your cost of finance, but on the other hand, it is not giving you any kind of return on that money. Another situation, if I require 10,000, but I have only 1,000 in my pocket, that is to say, I require more amount of funds, but in actual situation, I have lesser funds. Such a situation is undercapitalization. And it goes without saying that even this kind of situation is not good enough because an organization having lesser amount of funds will never be able to concentrate on its objectives. Let us say if a company wants to do production, लेकिन finance ही नहीं है तो production होने ही नहीं वाला है. Ultimately, the profits will be affected. So in either case, company can neither be overcapitalized nor undercapitalized. There has to be a balance between the two that has to be maintained. Optimum financing is the only key. So you will have to understand the meaning of these concepts, the causes as to why would a firm get overcapitalized or undercapitalized. There are some effects, as I said, both have their adverse consequences. Ultimately, you can have some remedies, you can apply some precautionary measures once you are overcapitalized or undercapitalized so that the organization can come out of that situation. I hope I was clear up till now. Moving further in the same unit, chapter number 4 talks about capital structure. Having studied about capitalization, capital structure is simply known as the makeup of capitalization. When I say makeup of capitalization, आपने मुझे ये तो बता दिया कि money invested in business is capital. Fine. But what is that structure? When you have a capital of 1 lakh invested into your business, ये 1 lakh rupees कहाँ से raise हुआ है? When I decide that structure, it becomes my capital structure. To give you an example, out of that 1 lakh, it could happen that 20% I have raised from equity, 10% I have raised from preference shares, 20% I have raised from debentures, and the remaining I have taken as a loan from the bank. So this structure has to be designed. The funds that you raise as an organization, it is either the owned funds or it is either the borrowed funds. So both have to be decided. Having more of own funds is also not good, and having more of borrowed funds again is not a good situation. So you need to understand the meaning and the factors affecting. As I said, every chapter will have this question, factors affecting. So even in this chapter there would be number of factors which will affect my capital structure. बहुत सारे ऐसे फैक्टर्स होंगे जो डिसाइड करेंगे कि फंड्स इक्विटी से लाए जाएं या फंड्स लोन्स के थ्रू रेज किए जाएं. इन शॉर्ट फंड्स ओन होने चाहिए या बोरोड होने चाहिए. There are factors which would affect this also. To name a few, it could be the size of business, that is whether a business is a large scale business or a small scale business. It could be any kind of legal policy by the government. It could be the economic situation, whether we are having a boom condition or whether we are having a depression. Those things also matter. Whether a company is having good amount of earning or whether the business has very less earnings, whether a business is risky or whether a business has a stable earnings, everything affects the capital structure. Lastly, you also have to do the characteristics of capital structure. There are types of capital structure. Now, as I said, the types would be whether I want to go with a capital structure having only equity shares, मतलब मुझे सिर्फ own funds के साथ अपना business start करना है. हो सकता है I want to go with equity along with debentures. I want to go equity with preference shares. Or I may also prefer a mixed capital structure जहाँ पे equity भी होगा, preference भी होगा, debentures भी होंगे, and it could even include loans from banks. So these types you have to study. One of the important questions from this chapter would be trading on equity, also known as leverage. I don't know if you have heard about trading on equity, but just to give you a brief idea, trading on equity is nothing but when an organization is making use of both own funds as well as borrowed funds. अगर मैं equity के साथ debentures को भी use कर रही हूँ to raise finance, that means I am trading on equity. And why do we trade on equity? A company would trade on equity so that using the borrowed funds in such a manner, my equity price or the return on my own funds should be increased. When that takes place, it becomes trading on equity or it becomes financial leverage. Again, we would be talking in depth about this topic in chapter number 4. The last but not the least chapter in unit 1 is working capital. Again, the accountancy students already know what is working capital, and you have done this topic in your 11th and your 12th standard. I hope the answer that comes to your mind is working capital is the difference between current asset and the current liability. आप जब current asset और current liability को minus करते थे तो आपको working capital मिलता था. But if I talk about the terms of management, working capital is generally considered as the money that is invested in the current assets. Now, there are broadly two kinds of capital. It could be fixed capital or it could be working capital. जो capital आपने fixed assets में invest किया हुआ है, maybe land and building, plant and machinery, that is your fixed capital, and that remains blocked also for a larger period of time. But the money that is used to meet the day-to-day expenses, the operations of a business enterprise, and जो आप current assets में invest करके रखते हो, current assets to name, it could be your debtors, it could be the cash on hand, it could be a fixed deposit with the bank, it could be a bill receivable, it could be the stock inventory. These kind of things constitute your working capital. So you have to understand the meaning. Again, there would be factors that would affect your working capital. आपका size of business बड़ा है या छोटा है, your earnings are more or less, your sales are on cash or on credit, whether you are a risky business or you are a stable business, everything affects your working capital requirement. As I said, there would be types of working capital. To name a few, It could be cash, it could be stock, it could be datas that are generally known as current assets. So as I said, money invested into current assets is nothing but working capital. So these types you need to study. There are some sources from where you can raise the working capital. Now there are a number of sources. It could be your creditors, it could be your commercial banks, it could be the certificate of deposits, it could be commercial paper. Also, it includes one topic, that is the NRI fund. Now you know what is NRI, it is a non-resident Indian. Even the funds brought up by these people constitute your working capital source. So you have an entire question as to from where the money can be raised for working capital. Lastly, you need to do the components of working capital. To give a general description, working capital is also known as a circulating capital. It is said that working capital begins with cash. Ultimately, it has to end at cash also. To be very simple with you, anything that can be converted very easily into cash and within a shorter span of time, it is working capital. लेकिन जो कैपिटल आपने बहुत सालों के लिए ब्लॉक किया हुआ है अपने एसेट्स में, फिक्स्ड एसेट्स में, दैट इज फिक्स्ड कैपिटल एंड दैट इज नॉट वर्किंग कैपिटल. So this was all about your unit 1, that is financial management. I hope I was clear with this unit. Moving further with unit 2, it is social responsibilities of business, and you can see the weightage, it is 15%. Now as I said, unit 1 was 50% weightage and it has 5 chapters that you have to do. Unit 2, you need to study only 1 chapter for that, and these are the things that are covered in the unit. You can very well see on the slide also. You all have heard about a word CSR. So do you know the full form of CSR? It is corporate social responsibility. Corporate meaning to say a business, and social responsibility, it is the responsibility that I as a business would have towards my people, towards my society. Now, a question that can come to your mind is why social responsibility is required. So in the current scenario, especially in 21st century, every business organization has become cautious about its duties towards a society. अब एक business organization के लिए motive सिर्फ profit कमाना नहीं होगा. Along with earning a reasonable amount of profit, it also has to give its duties towards the society. And even I as a customer, I would prefer those companies more that are working towards the society, towards the betterment and welfare of society. It could be just to reduce pollution, it could be working towards education of people, any kind of societal welfare that a business thinks about. So you need to study about the meaning of social responsibility as to why CSR is required, why is it important. And thereafter, you have an entire answer about the social responsibilities towards various parties. When I say parties, these parties are the stakeholders. Any person who has its interest in that business organization. So as a company, as a business organization, I owe something to various people. These people could be a shareholder who has invested his hard-earned money in my business. I owe something towards him also. It could be the customers who are spending their money to buy my products. So I need to have my responsibility towards those customers as well. I cannot give them cheap quality products at a higher price. I need to give them good quality products and at a reasonable price that is affordable by majority of them. As a company, as an organization, I also owe my duties towards the other organizations that are working with me. Could be even my competitors, could be the rivals, but I need to have some kind of social responsibility towards them as well. I, as an enterprise, will also have my responsibilities towards the state and the government at large. Having a business organization, I cannot work against the government laws. If government has put ban on few things, I need to abide by those laws. I cannot go against it. If I talk about the current situation, we know that even during this pandemic situation, when we see there are some businesses opened up, even they are following some norms, some measures that are given by government. Even they are following responsibilities towards their customers and the society at large. So definitely in this chapter also, you need to study how and where an organization is responsible. As I said, it could be customer, it could be any another company, it could be a shareholder, it could be the society at large also. Lastly, there are some arguments also that are for and that are against the social responsibility. As an organization, few organizations may feel that one needs to be socially responsible and there are a number of benefits for that. But even there are organizations today that still put the profit at the first place, and social responsibility is hardly seen. They have some arguments even against social responsibility. So those arguments you have to do in this chapter as to whether one needs to be socially responsible or not. Whatever the case may be, I would conclude the unit by saying one thing, that every business enterprise has to consider social responsibility to have success in the long run. As a customer, faithfulness or loyalty can only be achieved when there is a business who is thinking about the society above the profit motive. So this was your unit 2. I can say a very simple yet interesting topic, and a small topic covering a weightage of 15%. Coming to the final unit, that is unit 3, you can see it is the 21st century's office management, covering a weightage of 20%. Again, it will cover two broad topics, as you can see. One, that is office and office management. The other is management of record and filing. Now, you all know that earlier the office and the management of office was very different as compared to the 21st century's office management that we talk. When I talk of office management, office is particularly considered as the brain of organization, because whatever things are happening in that enterprise, whatever records are received or given, everything is stored within that office. At a click, you are able to receive every piece of information you require. So the way offices were managed earlier and the way they are managed today has a wide difference. So in this unit particularly, you are going to study about what do you mean by office, the definition of office. To be very simple, any kind of place where clerical activities are undertaken, the office work is undertaken, the documentation is undertaken, it is considered to be office. How would you manage that office? So those points are also covered in this unit. It has its own importance, so that you have to do. As I said, an office is place from where either records are received or even the records have to be given at a point of time. So there can be an inward mail and there can be an outward mail also. There could be a mail that is received by the office and there could be a mail or a piece of information that is to be given outside. Everything has to be managed in the office. I can simply put it as office being the heart, being the brain of the organization. ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में अगर आपको छोटी से छोटी बात भी जाननी हो, it should be available from the office. The second part of the unit talks about the management of record and filing. Having studied about office and how to manage the office, office के अंदर actually होता क्या है? So there are records, and those records have to be managed and filed. You all might have heard about the earlier system of recording. It could be the Bahi Khata system, the Deshi Nama system, the single entry bookkeeping system. All these things were followed earlier. A small shopkeeper, when he used to sell his products, he just used to maintain records maybe in a notebook, recording manually as to what are the purchases, what are the sales, what are the expenses, and the cash balance on hand. But today, hardly do we find people recording manually. There is always an electronic record or electronic filing of records along with manual records, if any. So, in this topic particularly, you are going to study the meaning and the definition of record and filing as to what constitutes a record and what is the meaning of filing those records. To give you a simple example, when I'm teaching some 300 students at a stretch, and I want to know only about one student as to what is his roll number, in which class he studies, in which division he is studying, what are the subjects that are selected by him, what is the contact number, what is the email address. I can just go to the office of college and I can search with his or her name. Ultimately, each and every piece of detail that has been recorded and that has been filed would come on the screen. That is how simple things have become today. So this is your 21st century office management. In 21st centuries, we have computer data records. You go to any organization, you go to a bank, or you go to even a shopping mall, they also ask for your details. And those details are recorded in their computer for future reference. Even when I talk about e-filing, the records are filed in the computer. Now, when I say computer, it can either be in any file of the computer, or today the documents and the records can also be stored in the online space, network space. So even those things you have to study over here. You will also be studying about different ways of filing the records, that we call it e-filing, electronic filing, and its importance, because definitely to have recording manually, and similarly if I record in a computer, there are a number of advantages. The best example could be the time and the energy is saved much more when I do a computerized records. Even the chances of errors are reduced. So those things you would be studying particularly in unit number 3. I hope I was clear up till now. So your unit 1 was financial management, covering 50% weightage. Unit 2 talks about CSR, social responsibility, 15% weightage. Unit 3 all about office management, 20% weightage. The last and the final unit that you all are familiar with is case study. You can see the weightage remaining same as earlier semesters, 15%, and be it the first year BCom or be it second year BCom, every year you have learned, you have done case studies. So even in this semester, there will be a question on solving a case study. And as you all know, a case study is divided into 3 parts, namely facts, problems, and solutions. Whenever there would be a case study given to you, just like other years, you will have to write down the facts that are involved in the case. You will have to understand, you will have to pick out the problems that are there from the facts. And once the problems have been decided, you also will have to decide, you also will have to give the suggestions and the solutions as to how the problem can be solved. If there will be any other question pertaining to the case study given, those questions will also have to be answered. Now, when I say that this semester talks more about financial management and the social responsibility, definitely you will expect case studies on this topic. You can have a case study with efficient financial management, or you can have a case study where you need to answer as to how a business can be more responsible towards a society. So based on that, you need to answer your case studies. This was all for your semester 3 syllabus for business, semester 5 syllabus for business administration, covering 4 units altogether. From the next lecture onwards, that is from the next online lecture, I would begin with the first unit, first chapter, that is financial management. So at a stretch now, in every lecture, I would be explaining you the topics. And I hope that this lecture, the first lecture of business administration, was useful to you. I hope this lecture would have given you at least an idea about the syllabus coverage of semester 5 BA. By now, you should know what are the things that are covered in this semester and what are the questions that you are going to study, particularly for semester 5 business administration. Thank you for the day. And we would definitely see you soon with the next lecture of BA. As I said, we begin with Unit 1 of Financial Management for the next lecture. Thank you very much.